All right. Good morning. My name's Tony Dice. I'm a therapist here at the Farley Center. I have my master's in counseling, and I have my CSAC.
And I am Tammy Dice, and I am an associate professor at Old Dominion University and the director of the Human Services program there. And we are very pleased to have you here with us today. We are pretty excited about this topic. It can be pretty dull, but we are going to try to present it in a way that engages you and introduces you to the depth and breadth of ethical decision making.
Oh, come on. Who thinks ethics is dull? I mean, isn't half of ethics unethical and half of it is ethical? So the unethical side's a lot of fun. As you can see, you can see we're noticeably a couple here. We're married. We have 5 children. We live down in Virginia Beach. It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you today. So we're looking forward to this presentation as well.
Mm-hmm. And what we both were drawn to ethics in different ways. I've been presenting on ethics, was introduced to it by a mentor in my master's degree program, continued to publish and to present on the topic over the years in my profession, and have served on the ethics committee for the National Organization of Human Services. And so kind of continues to evolve as an area of interest with regard to both research and practice.
My road to this field is a little bit more colorful. Let's see, I was in the military for quite a while, had a lot of fun. I guess I had too much fun, you might say. I ended up publishing in this field as well, and let's just say don't have the cleanest record getting here. So my road through ethics has been a diverse one. Ultimately, though, is something I found a lot of interest in. I did a lot of work in that field in my master's, and then coming here to the Farley Center, we work in a substance abuse inpatient residential facility that on a day-to-day basis, this colorful population has all kinds of ethical dilemmas going on. So ethics has become a big part of my life, so looking forward to this.
And before we dive in, just to get a feel for you all, by raise of hand, who identifies as counselors, mental health counselors? Okay. How about social work? All right. Any human services? Okay. And how about specifically in substance abuse?
Yes.
Okay.
Go team.
And how about other fields that are represented? Okay. What are a couple of those fields? Gerontology. Excellent. Okay. Trauma. Yes.
I'm the peer recovery specialist here at the
Excellent. Okay. Yes.
Administrative.
Oh, excellent.
Excellent.
Okay. Great. Nursing.
Nursing.
And eating disorders. Okay. So I bet there's a lot of specializations also in here. Mm-hmm. And across every field, there are ethical dilemmas that we're faced with. And we're bound to follow ethics codes and be able to resolve these in ethically competent manner. So that's what we're here to talk about today.
All right, cool. All right, our outline for today, guys. We're going to first get a sense of what your perceptions of ethical behavior are. We have a few exercises we're going to do and get a sense of where you're at. We want to discuss the importance of why ethical decision making is important. You know, we don't want to do any more harm than we have to when we're working with clients. And then we want to apply some different ethical decision-making tools, and we're going to work through different ways to apply them. One we might focus on more is the Corey and Callahan's. And then at the end, we're going to work in groups. We're going to tackle our own scenarios, and you guys are going to work together to develop your own ethical dilemma and then solve it. So let's get to it.
All right. So when you're in practice, it's clear that there are lots of situations that you're confronted with that are challenging to determine how to manage. And there aren't just easy answers to these situations. There's often not one solution that can be found in anyone's professional code of ethics. In fact, often those codes of ethics have conflicting standards, or they're very vague, or they don't even address the specific issue that you might be facing. And so we have to be aware that there's a litany of different things to consider, including things such as cultural variables, as we are determining what is going to be the best approach that will minimize harm to the most people that are involved in the situation.
And it's not just the cultural variables that the client holds, but us as well. We must be aware of our blind spots when we go into this as well. All right, some particularly challenging issues. Through different studies, we've pulled some challenging issues we see. Some of these are things that you may encounter on a daily basis. For instance, the physical contact. You know, is it a therapeutic side hug? Is it a full hug? Is it just a no touching policy? I mean, every one of these can be approached from various different directions. Let's see, some other ones there. Use of an interpreter, the privacy issues. Our interpreter versus their family member. I mean, there's a number of different directions each one of these can be looked at.
Something like accepting or giving gifts. And, you know, what are the policies around that? It's so contextual. And it's going to vary from agency to agency and from client base to client base. And so, again, there isn't just one solid answer to pretty much any of these particular issues that are present. And so we want you to take a minute to kind of consider these.
All right. At this time, guys, this is what I'd like you to do. On your table, you'll see there's this mysterious black box. All right. Some of you have made them less mysterious by looking in them already, but we can look at the ethics of that later. But right now, everyone grab one of those black boxes, and inside, you're going to find a question. All right. Now, I don't want you to focus on solving that question right now. I want you to look at it, and then what does your gut instinct say? Where do you go to first? Take a minute, process this with your person next to you, and just look for what's your knee-jerk reaction. What do you go to when you think of this problem first? All right. So take a minute or two, discuss amongst yourselves, and see where you're at. All right, let's bring it back in, guys. Let me get your attention again. Bring it back in. All right. Who would like to share, just share real briefly, what was that knee-jerk reaction? Where did you go to right off the bat? Come on, don't be shy. We're just being videotaped. Yes, sir.
It's not simple.
It's not simple. No. What did you have?
We had referring to reparative therapy. Is this ever ethically appropriate? And I needed a definition of what reparative therapy was.
There you go. Consultation right off the bat.
You know, being male, generally, that if it's broke, I fix it. And but with clarified definition, the you know, as long as the person, the initial answer is yes.
Okay.
If it's out of the scope of what I'm competent or capable or feel comfortable doing, talk with the client. You know, these are some options.
So right off the bat, you realize that I'm out of my depth.
Right. If that in fact is the case.
Right.
And in this case, it would be, yeah.
Okay. Great. Who else? Yes, ma'am.
I think for most of our situations, we first thought, what's the context? If the answer is it
Right.
depends.
Yeah. I mean, what are the issues? Exactly. The details. How important are they? Yep. So would an ethics code, in that case, solve the issue? No. You need to take into account all the issues. Yes, ma'am.
Well, so much of it is always, you know, there's kind of rules, but also our perception, how we interpret it, because almost everything is subjective. But there are some, you know, rules, separation of church and state, that sort of thing. But other than that, it's like, where would we?
No, it's such so little information, that little piece of paper. That's all would fit in the box. I mean,
When looking at this list for others that didn't have, you know, that was not your actual dilemma, do other things jump out maybe that you've had experience with that were really troubling or difficult for you to deal with?
yes.
Just real recently, LinkedIn. I had a commander that I worked with a couple of years ago asked to be a part of his network on LinkedIn. And I couldn't, I didn't feel comfortable doing that. Or Facebook even, I've had friends over the years.
Yeah.
Facebook.
Big
Facebook,
dilemmas.
huge issue. Yes.
Social media.
All right, who else?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Mine was accepting and giving gifts. And I had to chuckle because yesterday I had to really struggle with myself around wanting to show up to the graduation of one of my former clients.
Yeah.
See how she's doing?
Gosh, that one's huge.
Yeah.
I mean, is it more damaging to not do it?
Yeah.
Anybody else?
It's not what I got, but I had a client yesterday who is graduating, wanting to know how she can keep in touch, and wanting to let me know what happens as a result of this, this, and this that is going on in her life, and setting a boundary with what is a relationship and what isn't a relationship.
Very good.
Anybody else? Yes, ma'am.
Cooperation with law enforcement. I found out that one of my clients is wanted on a warrant right now.
Oh. What do you do? What are all the details? What are the local regulations? What does your facility say? Yes.
And it's clearly a dilemma when you're faced with the situation and you're like, okay, I don't have an easy answer. And yet being able to make sound and appropriate ethical decisions is essential for not only you, but for the client as well.
Yeah. Even what might be even more scary is that you do have a instinctive go-to, I know the right answer to this, when your whole life you've kind of worked yourself into that answer and you've never taken the time to properly, vet this answer. And so you're so set in your ways, you think you know what's going on. And this whole time you may have been doing damage without being aware. So at some point there has to be a process. Yes, sir.
Yeah, mine was physical contact with the client, one is ethical, one is unethical. And my experience is that it's always essential to take in the client's frame of reference. You can be working with a client for a while, and then 6 months later they tell you that they had a sexual trauma. And you may think it's perfectly appropriate to pat the person and they'll react, but you never know exactly what a client is experiencing or condoning about what you're doing. So I think the smart money is just because there's no more important issue than patient safety, and you have to take care of yourself. So I think if a client sticks out their hand to shake it, I think that's fine. Other than that, I think it's best to be pretty reserved about physical contact because you may think you're being comforting, they may find out or express much later that that wasn't so comforting. In fact, they felt invaded. So you just have to be very careful.
I think so. Case by case. Everyone needs to be tailored. Yes.
So in recognizing the complexity, we have to be aware of the counter to making a poor ethical decision. And lots of things can happen. Harm to the client can actually happen. They can lose faith in the helping fields. I mean, a poor ethical decision can result in a client saying, forget this, counseling stinks, I'm out, and never getting the help that they actually really need. Being able to be culturally relevant in one's ethical decision making is essential because otherwise we can contribute to prejudices and discrimination that results in individuals internalizing a poor sense of self. And just by making an ethical decision from an ethnocentric perspective, from our own personal frame of reference without considering others. And the miseducation, not only might we be going in the wrong direction, but then we are modeling something that's inappropriate for our clients and potentially for our colleagues.
And the reinforced defenses, I threw that one in there. In substance abuse, you're working with a client who's looking for something to grab onto. The minute something goes askew and there's an ethical dilemma that might not go the way they think it should go, they're going to grab onto that, and all of a sudden they have an anchor to hold on to. And so it's one more thing you have to work through with the client. So, all right. Consequences.
And not only for the clients themselves, but we have to be aware of the consequences to us professionally when we're not making sound ethical decisions. I mean, everything from losing credentials, clearly getting fired from positions, to public reprimand. Who is aware that ethical violations that are reported to licensing boards or like your professional organization could result in public reprimand? Now, that's pretty amazing, isn't it? When you recognize that if I engage in this, my name might be broadcast to anybody as somebody who is inappropriate or incapable of meeting the expectations of my profession. And so, we have to be careful. In addition to legal actions, this is a little touchy though, because sometimes to perform ethically with our clients, we might be forced to break the law. And when we consider that, I mean, we need to be aware that the laws are there for a reason, and so we have to be aware of what those laws are, but not all law is good, right? And so at times you may find that you're in a position where what is in the best interest of your client and what is deemed ethically sound is actually in contrast to law. And thank goodness for those who have been willing to break the law over time. Advocacy, if you look at any of our ethical codes across all of the professions that are represented here today, advocacy is one of those core standards. And to be a good advocate sometimes means that we challenge existing laws. And so, we are glad that there were people that stood up and broke civil rights laws prior, and women's suffrage, and most recently LGBT marriage issues. And there's so many, just the list goes on, and there's so many more ahead of us. And we as mental health professionals might at times be faced with that situation in which we have to make a decision. Are we going to be ethical here and serve the most amount of people in the best manner possible, or are we going to follow the law strictly? And so we have to be aware of that.
Yes, but could you just give a concrete example of something that might face us in our clinical practices where we might feel obliged as an ethical professional to break a law?
Are there any examples that anyone can give in which they've been in that situation, where they've had to say, I'm going to actually go against the law here to some degree in order to best serve my client? There's not been anyone?
How about you?
They're breaking the law.
Take for instance, you're working with an underage client, and the parent is insistent that they know everything you've talked about, and they're within their legal rights to ask for that. However, I feel some of this, I can give them a lot, but some of this is going to damage the relationship already established with the client. I may make that decision upon myself.
Yeah. And I was a school counselor, so that ethical dilemma I was faced with on a daily basis. So that's a pretty concrete example.
The lawsuit aspect of this, of course, we've always faced that, but if you ever called the question, why did you make this decision? How much more of a solid position are you coming from if you fell back on, well, I followed Corey and his ethical decision-making model, and this is how I got to this decision. You reinforce your position, having to have a firm stance to fall back on. All right. Why focus on it? Why not focus just on the code? Why not just say always fall back on? Why not say this is the Bible? Why not? Well, ethic codes are fairly non-specific and may create conceptual confusion in their attempt to be all things to all people. All right?
This was written so long ago, and yet it's still so relevant today. It still stands.
All right.
And the codes are general, and they don't address everything, and they can conflict. Who's aware of, within their particular codes, whether that's social work or counseling or human services or whatever your field, who's aware of a couple of codes that are in conflict within the one code? Yes.
some fluctuation around business contact and social relationships, romantic relationships. It used to be never, and then it was 2 years, it's 5 years, and which I think is really nuts because the transference is there regardless of the time. So, but there has certainly been controversy around an appropriate time span, if any.
Yes, and that shows that evolution over time and the changes and the need for trainings and to stay current so that you're aware of shifts over time. But even within one code, there can be standards that conflict with each other. And so what are some that you're aware of? Anybody? Anybody?
Yes.
Does it need to be ethical code, or can we talk about 42 CFR and federal regulations versus ethical codes, or even federal, like 42 CFR versus the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act, how sometimes they can conflict?
Absolutely. Law and ethics codes can definitely conflict. But really, even just within one ethics code, there can be conflict. Yes?
Well, even thinking about the DSM has changed how it defines disorders. I mean, we've gone through like 3 different books since, I was in graduate school. So
Yes.
what was one time considered disordered is now considered normal, and what was normal is now disordered.
Yeah, that's true. But even within the code, like one example is that we are expected to honor and respect the values and decision making of our clients, and yet we are supposed to report if somebody is in harm of hurting self or others. Okay, so in lots of dilemmas that we're faced with, those codes are going to both come into play. And if somebody were just going with an automatic, one person be like, well, I have to follow what they want. I'm supposed to honor their values and their perspective. Where another person would say, the code tells me I have to report, so I have to report. And so without fully understanding the complexity of the code, things can be missed. And the perspectives and value in each of those might be missed for a given situation. So it does take an awareness of one's code of ethics, but expecting to be able to rely on it for the answer is just not sufficient. And so, our response.
Our response to this. In addition to a professional ethical code, it is important for mental health professionals to have a well-developed ethical decision-making model on hand and the ability to use it.
And what we propose is that it's not enough to just have a problem-solving model. The problem-solving models are great, and we're going to talk about the Corey famous problem-solving model. But what we're saying is that it needs to be utilized from a cognitively complex space. So we've got to be in a more developed mindset where we can conceptualize the Corey's 8-step model from a complex lens, through a complex lens. So Perry's developmental model is really well applied in this respect, where we look at the difference between dualists versus committed relativists. And you can go to the next. These developmental models really assume that higher is better, in the sense that when we are functioning from a higher level of thinking, then we're able to be more flexible, we are able to perspective take more, we are less dogmatic and more empathic, and so we strive to approach the world through a more cognitively complex, highly developed frame of thinking and acting, which is very difficult. Very, very few people actually get to the committed relativistic level. They even say that you can't achieve it until you're at least 45 years old, which is interesting. And so I'm happy to say I'm not a committed relativist because I'm not that age yet. So we really work toward that. But it doesn't mean that we can't apply a lot of the principles of complex thinking with every ethical dilemma that we're faced with. And the counter to that is when we are viewing things from a dualist angle.
Yeah. All right, practitioners who are dualists. Gosh, they want to know the answer. They want to know it now. I mean, this type of thinking actually works great on the battlefield when there's a time of the essence. But if you don't have that kind of time, I mean, this is what we're looking at. They like to be rigidly adhere to the guidelines. They consult with people who are like-minded because they want reinforcement for their answer. They dismiss alternative explanations. And they're uncomfortable with ambiguity. They want to know that they're right. It feels good being right. I want to be comfortable. I want to be okay. I know I did the right thing. Let's move forward. It's a strong place to be in. But in its haste, it misses out on a lot of things that need to be looked at. There's very little self-reflection and soul-searching. It's just like, let's get the job done and move on.
Yeah, they tend to be kind of box checkers. And versus those who are relativists who are going to understand that the ethics codes are just one tool that needs to be utilized among many, that the decision-making models are used in conjunction and also aren't necessarily the end-all. There's an attempt to be challenged. So I'm going to seek consultation from those who are going to push me to view the situation through different lenses, aren't just going to confirm what I know it to be right. And they're often left with a sense of, okay, this is the decision I'm going to make. But I am also now aware, clearly, there are lots of decisions that could have been made. And this is the one that I feel is best, but I recognize that it's not perfect because no one answer is perfect. And so there tends to be that sense of, I'm making this decision because it ultimately will do the most amount of good for the most amount of people involved. But I'm still also aware of the potential consequences of even this decision. So it's a far more complex space to be in. And it feels less comfortable. And that, cognitive developmental theory is based on that to begin with. I mean, higher is better, but not easier, because of that sense that you've got a lot more data that you're willing to process and to make sense of.
And so the ending position is less firm. You're like, okay, I'm going with this, and you're acutely aware of the damage that still might be done, even though this is the best possible scenario. All right, problem-solving models out there. There are others out there. Today we're going to be looking at this one.
And just before he dives into that, I mean, what's so critical here is what we just mentioned. I'm going to restate it. The problem-solving models are really pretty simple, applicable, hands-on models, and so they could be done in a really basic and not so effective manner that could still result in poor ethical decision-making. And so really what's important here is to recognize that what makes these basic problem-solving models effective is when they are approached from a committed relativistic perspective. And that's what we'll be talking about.
All right, so let's take this simple 8-step program here and identify the problem of the dilemma. That sounds simple, and it's actually one of the hardest things to do in a dilemma. You take a whole case study and you got to boil it down, distill it down to what is the issue, what is the main problem there in one sentence. Can we define what is the problem? And time needs to be taken to look at this. All right, ultimately, what are we looking for in this whole dilemma? What at the core needs to be addressed? Number 2, this one's, I want to say the first one's important, but this one's just as important as well. Identify the potential issues involved. If you're going down a checklist, okay, this and this, and you stop because you have 2 good ones, you need to keep going on it. And under each one, you need to look for, okay, what are the ramifications of that issue? there's going to be multiple layers to this one. It's going to take some time and writing them out. So you may have a whole list of stuff you're addressing.
And this is where cultural components become important too. We can forget that when we're so focused on the content of the actual dilemma and fail to recognize the broader systemic variables that may be impacting our clients or the situation. So, we have to be cognizant of remembering to include the cultural components in this issues step.
Okay. And then the next step, number 3, know your code. Run down through the codes and don't get sucked into as you're going through and they're lengthy and you're going through this. No. This one hits right on. Yeah, I got one. Keep going. I mean, there's going to be multiple codes that you're going to have to address, and feel free to pull them out. I mean, it's not a big thing to have 3, 4, 5, 6 statements you might need to address when going through this model. Number 4, know applicable laws and regulations. Not just state, federal laws, but in your own house, the facility you're working in. What are their guidelines? Do they speak to this? Is this something they've had to deal with in the past?
And again, like we mentioned before, just because it's a regulation that your agency has doesn't mean it's a good regulation. And so sometimes what becomes, what you become aware of is, wow, this is problematic and I need to do something agency-wide within this system to advocate for change. And that's a perfect role for you as the mental health provider in that facility.
Number 5, obtain consultation. Gosh, this one is so huge because you can blow it right now. Right here, I'm going to go ask Stan, the man. He's always got my back. Hey, what do you think about this? He's always got my back. That does me nothing. I need to ask people who think differently than me, people from different points of view, someone who may be more attuned to the client than I am. Consultation isn't just a one-stop shop. Consultation means reaching out to where you may least expect to find the answer.
Mm-hmm. And cultural informants become hugely important here. If you're engaging with somebody who is culturally different from you, and quite honestly, almost every encounter is culturally diverse, then be aware of those who can help you to understand the client's perspective through their lens, and seek out cultural informants who can help you in that way. And again, you don't necessarily have to, in your consultation, be saying, oh yeah, I'm working with Jamie Ann Johnson, who is at my client. I've been working with her for 5 months and her address is such and such. Can you tell me what you would do in this situation? Consultation, can be far more broad. And it can allow you to get information without revealing personal information and violating any type of confidentiality.
And this step, ego comes into play. Mm-hmm. Ego will trip you up so quick here because, all right, I'm actually a subject matter expert in this. I don't have to go anywhere for this. Mm-hmm. The intern in the room could blow your mind, just bouncing it off someone in the room. I mean, set the ego aside and work for the benefit of the client. Know that you don't have all the answers. Mm-hmm. All right, number 6, consider possible courses of action. This may take longer than it looks like, guys, because every course of action, this rules in number 7, you have to look at the positives and the negatives of each. Which direction am I go with this? Do I need to go anywhere else? Do I need to refer? Do I need to take further steps? The positive and negative implications of each one need to be written out, because no matter what action you take, there's always going to be a positive and there's always going to be a negative. There's no win-win-win-win-win. There's always going to be a downside to a decision.
Mm-hmm. Even when something seems illogical, even when it seems like there's no way I would do this, put it down as a possible action and take the time to consider what the positive and negative of it is. Because truly, there's not a single action out there that is all good or all bad. And so to just go into your final step with an awareness will help you to then piece together a final action that you have a full understanding of from both a positive and a negative standpoint.
And you can see with all this work leading to number 8, there's going to be you have to make a decision at some point, and you have all this evidence supporting different actions. Mm-hmm. One's not going to go, ta-da! It's going to be like, I guess I'm going to go this direction. It looks like it was the most good with the least amount of harm. Mm-hmm. So you should be left with that feeling of, well, I put the work in. Let's move forward now.
And when I teach this at ODU to my students, I present them with a case, as we're just kind of walking through it initially, of just the older client and who has been diagnosed with a terminal disease and is not wanting family members to watch his failure through the awful process of dying. So wants to end his life and wants you to help him get his affairs in order. And so truly the automatic with the majority of my students is, he's going to commit suicide. We have to report. And I'm like, okay, that is one code. There's also other standards, particularly like in the ACA code, that talks about assisting with end-of-life decision-making. And let's really think about it. So when we go through these steps, some of the things that jump out are, when you consider the issues, are imminence, or what is what would actually happen. So, okay, we say, oh gosh, you are ready to commit suicide. Hold on, let me call the authorities. The authorities come, what do? They're going to assess, and they're probably going to be like, this person's not like on the ledge. And then what's that going to do to your relationship with that person? Or let's say that they just take your word for it and they admit them. Then what? What's going to happen once they're admitted? Yeah, 72 hours and then out. And do you think he's going to stroll back in your office? No. So when we really start to think about it, that automatic knee jerk could actually result in harm to that client ultimately. So, and that isn't to say that reporting might be, certainly we would list that as one of the possible actions, but we would have to look at the positives and negatives of that. And when we go through this in class, the students end up putting together a decision, an action that pieces together lots of different things because they've taken the time to look at all the issues, and which includes often all the people involved. So family and medical professionals and all different types of individuals. The consultation leads us to different resources, and the possible courses of action allows us to see that there are multiple things that could be combined to result in an effective outcome for the client. And so, ultimately you're left with, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, as opposed to, I got a report. And yet you don't necessarily feel that comfortable with it because you're like, okay, if I don't report, God, what if he does go out and jump off the ledge? Or I have decided to report, but I'm now aware that I could really be pushing him away and harming his connection with seeking help. And so every decision you're left going, there is a negative here. But it is still in the end a far more complex decision that likely will result in the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people involved. And you had a statement?
Well, the end of life statement, I want you to help me get my decisions. That doesn't necessarily mean dying. That doesn't necessarily mean suicide. It could be a choice to not chemo.
Yes.
It could be a choice to sign a DNR. It could be a choice for a lot of things. So don't jump to that conclusion either, because it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to die today.
Exactly.
Or I'm planning on killing.
That's so true. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, end of life issues, because I teach this also in developmental science. The laws, you have to know the laws, because something could be legal in one area, but it's not legal, and you'd be open to a lawsuit, if you knew that sort of stuff. When I was young, even attempting suicide was against the law in New York State. You'd be institutionalized for 60 days. And if you were a clinician and you knew they were going to do it, then they found out that you had been told, you could be open to a lawsuit.
Yeah. So, and those are all those things that have to be considered as you're going through this process. So,
all right. So how are you guys doing now? You've been fed physically and intellectually. We're not going to give you any more information. We're just going to work with what we have for the rest of the presentation. So what we're going to do now is give you a small break. So 7 minutes.
7 minutes max.
7 minutes max. All right,
7
use the
minutes.
restroom,
Start the
come on
time.
back, and then we're gonna start working together and power through. All right, let's bring it back in, guys. Let me grab my little clicker here. You're ready? We've had our training. We're ready to jump in now. This is our first example. The case. All right, this actually is based on a true story, but the names have been changed to protect the innocent, kind of thing. So let me read through this with you. There's a copy of this on the table in front of you, so you all can read along and refer back to it as we work through this next ethical dilemma. All right, the case. Brandon, an attractive 23-year-old gay male, entered a substance abuse recovery program and was assigned to Trevor, an attractive heterosexual male therapist who was close in age. Trevor had successfully worked with other gay clients who had entered the substance abuse program in the past and thus felt capable of working productively with Brandon. Over the next couple of weeks, they worked together as Trevor assisted Brandon in moving towards the goals outlined in his treatment plan. Brandon was very earnest in his recovery efforts. They established a positive bond, as therapists and clients often do. Then one day, Brandon shared with Trevor that he felt he was developing personal feelings for Trevor that were outside the boundaries of a therapist-client relationship. What should Trevor do? All right. What should Trevor do?
Go to the first.
All right. Step 1, identify the problem. All right. Let's distill that whole little story down to what is the problem.
Within a sentence or two.
Within one sentence. What do we have?
It's not uncommon. There is a sexual attraction between a client and his therapist,
We have-
regardless of their sexual orientation.
We have sexual attraction between a client and his therapist. Okay.
You also have a client-therapist relationship.
We have the client-therapist relationship to continue. To include what else are we missing there? Yes.
Countertransference.
Countertransference. But we also have, why is the client there? What's the client trying to do? He's in recovery, yes.
So he could be looking at something to hold on to other than his recovery. too.
Yeah, because he's in jeopardy of relapse. So he's in danger also. Let's see, the problem is that a gay man in early recovery has expressed feelings for his heterosexual case manager. I'm not saying that's the right answer, but that's just one that kind of encompassed each one of those areas. You know, trying to distill that whole story down to something that, wow, okay, here's the issue at large here.
Next.
Step 2, what are the issues? What are we dealing with?
Could be dealing with his trying, you know, it's like, that's why there's no 13th step. That's in the way of
There you go.
recovery.
Yeah. All right. The first issue is, okay, we cannot have a sexual relationship. Let's just put that on the table. That is wrong. What else?
But it's, I was gonna say it's more than that. It's like, are you distracting yourself from your recovery by doing that?
Okay.
And the appreciation or just the nice feelings can be misinterpreted by the client. He could be just feeling really appreciative and maybe there is sexual attraction, but discussing all that and sorting through. Okay, what really is this? And distraction and lots of other things.
Okay, so the first issue is whether or not these are true feelings.
And maybe I'm jumping the gun here, but to see if a new case manager is warranted. Okay. So maybe I'm jumping ahead.
That's all right. What other issues? Yes, ma'am.
It says that they're about nearly the same age, so it's unlikely that Trevor has not been in a situation like this before. He's unlikely to be licensed. He's working under somebody's supervision, so he probably needs to be consulting.
Yes. Looking at the time Trevor spent in his career.
And you also don't know whether Trevor has any feelings about the fact that his client is gay. Would he feel differently if it was a female client who expressed sexual attraction to him?
Exactly. What are his own issues? What is he dealing with himself? Where is he coming from? His own awareness. What else? Yes, ma'am.
Potentially access to care. I mean, we don't know sort of what the facility's capabilities are. If he's able to
is there anywhere else to go? Yeah. I mean, he's in early recovery. He's already emotionally confused. We need to look at that. Yes, ma'am.
So, I mean, I see that it says personal feelings, and there's like an assumption that that means sexual feelings or attraction. But I've seen it happen where clients or patients have feelings about like wanting their therapist to be their sponsor and crossing the boundary in a different way.
Yes. Is he confusing intimacy with sexual attraction? Yes. What else? All right. Then we covered that. Let's move on.
Did you have one more you wanted to add?
Yes.
Maybe also the client feeling special, feeling that the therapist is giving it a certain kind of attention. He's not just getting to it, it's making that's feeding into the bond.
Yes. No one's ever listened before. This must be love. Yes. All right. Review relevant ethical guidelines. All right. What do we know right off the bat? We've mentioned one up here. No sex. All right. Got that one out of the way. What else?
And feel free to bring out your smartphones and
Get your codes out. I know you guys carry them around in your back pocket.
Consultation, ASAP.
ACA website, NASW, NOHS.
Yes, ma'am.
Would be like to notify your supervisor.
Yeah.
There you go. Consultation. Consult. What else? We're not expecting verbatim responses on the code, guys. Just generalities. Well, we have a duty to recognize and build on our client's strengths. Yes, ma'am.
Serious and foreseeable harm.
Yes. Do no harm.
Yeah.
Exactly. We need to put the client's interest first. Let's see. We have a duty to not to discriminate, no matter what. We can't take whatever our internal biases are and say, all right, I can't handle this. No, I can't. And look at, wait, why am I saying this? What else?
And dual relationships here could span into the realm that's outside of the sexual relationship component. So, being able to assess that and recognize when dual relationships can be beneficial as opposed to just always avoided. And especially in terms of a client like this who might be really confused about his emotional state as opposed to this really clear decision-making process around his experience of his therapist.
And here's also where the ego comes into play. He stated, I've been doing this all the time. I've worked with a number of gays, and none of them ever fell into love with me. I can obviously handle this. Step 4. What laws or regulations?
And again, remember, even if it's not law-based, it could be regulations or policies for your institution or organization. So, what even thinking about within the realm of where you work, what would you share here in terms of your awareness?
And there may be nothing. All right.
What does your agency say? So it would be inappropriate to have anything other than a professional client-counsel relationship. It's pretty clearly outlined in most policies. What other things do policies talk about with regard to clients?
If you consider religion a culture, then this is a cultural issue too.
Yes, absolutely. There's all types of cultural variables. And virtually every policy manual for every agency is going to address the needs to be aware and to honor the cultural variations that our clients bring to us. And so, there could be all types of different things to consider that would be an expectation from your organization as to how you handle this situation. It might be very clear that the policy says no sexual intimate relationship, keep it professional. But other policies would also apply that could really impact the way in which you ultimately resolve the issue or handle the issue in terms of competence and referral and honoring the client. I mean, all of those can be outlined in different ways depending on the type of agency you're in. So it would be important to have an awareness of that. And if you don't know it, then find out, whether that's directly or through consultation. Did you have something you wanted to add?
It doesn't directly relate to the client, but I work for the DoD, and we have a very specific conflict of interest. I can't go into private practice, or if I'm in private practice, I can't take TRICARE.
Yeah.
Well, and we kind of touched on this earlier with the case of the person with the terminal illness saying, well, I don't want to have my family see me go through all this death and dying stuff, and people leap to suicide. And I guess what I realized is I was leaping to personal feelings being sexual personal feelings. But there can be personal feelings of, I want to please this person, I don't really want to show all my dirty self, and so maybe I'm not really getting out of it what I need to get out of it, because now all of a sudden I really like this guy, maybe later on in AA, well, maybe I don't know if he's in recovery, but maybe the client can be imagining perhaps a friendship, and if I really am authentic, he's not going to like me, my therapist won't like me.
Yeah.
So I guess I realized I probably left to the idea that it was sexual, where it may or may not be.
So the perception of the dual relationship lies on the client side. It may not lie on the practitioner side.
And that's such the exact example of why we're talking about the importance of this. Because it's so easy to go, oh my gosh, he said he's attracted to me. I can't have sex with a client. I don't want to. What do I do with this? And it's, oh, I gotta, it's easy to jump to conclusion. And, when you start to really go through and say, well, what are the variables involved here? What are the issues? What do and you start to see, well, maybe I don't have enough information even to be able to make a sound decision. And maybe I'm jumping to conclusions. And that would not happen if you just do the knee-jerk decision. And we say, oh, the code says no sex, I got to create a strong boundary, see you later. And then ultimately we might be missing what the real issue is.
All right, which leads us to consultation. I mean, I think a lot of us in the room already have that, okay, this is something I need to talk about, I got to get this. And supervision, peer-to-peer, who else might we talk to?
Certainly a supervisor.
Yes.
Anybody else you might go to?
Your licensing board.
Okay.
A lot of places have ethics committees.
Yes.
I mean,
Yeah. What
I
about?
don't think this is my, I don't think just the statement of attraction is serious enough to go to an ethics board, but I'd sure go to maybe peers, supervisors, other professionals in the field and say, I'm not familiar with this, how do I deal with it? But there's nothing, I don't know that I go to a licensing board for this.
Well, that would be in terms of reporting, but in terms of like I know the American Counseling Association has an ethics hotline. And so that would be and I think that's what you were referring to, like, somebody outside of the agency who doesn't have such a kind of narrow, this is how we do things in this agency, but to be able to step outside of that and say, what are other perspectives here on this situation? And I think those hotlines can be fabulous. And
maybe even the one who redirects you to say, okay, well, be more specific about what the feeling is.
Yes.
And we're like, in that moment. So,
Yeah.
What about a cultural informant?
That's what I was going with, that if you don't know a lot about the gay population, or you work with, quote, a few, find someone who does and see what that means, or find out some more information. I keep coming back to this kid's in early recovery. His brain is not fully functioning at this point. So, what are these feelings really?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Good that he said it.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. A gay therapist, another, there are entire meetings or sections of the recovery population that are homosexual, and that you can rely on them and go to them and seek out. Is this something that's commonly gone through? Is this kind of attraction to a sponsor or therapist or person with a different power differential? Is this a common part of recovery? So we don't know unless we consult. All right, possible courses of action. Yes.
The only reason that you know that there's some type of attraction is because the client said it, right? So potentially throughout our careers, we work with multiple people that have felt
a personal connection or an attraction to us, never verbalized.
Never verbalized.
Right, so just because it's not said doesn't mean it's not present.
That's
Yes.
so true.
And just because it's not said doesn't mean it's not an ethical dilemma that has to be addressed.
Right. Yes, ma'am.
Just devil's advocate, it doesn't say what Trevor's response is at all, but I think that there's a real invitation here to check one's own prejudices at the door. And I think even to say that obtaining a cultural informant is assuming that all gay people would experience recovery the same way or experience sexual attraction the same way is actually offensive. I mean, I think this could actually be a really fruitful place in their therapeutic relationship if Trevor handles it well and if he gets good supervision. Because one of the things we bring to our relationship that is where we're able to help people is when we are interpersonally attractive and we can make connection with them and, form that rapport. And so for him to be honest with his therapist and say what he said, I think, yeah, definitely needs to explore that more. And it's not necessarily like a hot potato, I need to get out of this situation or whatever.
You're exactly right. You're doing exactly what we're talking about right now. You're going to weigh the positives and negatives of each course of action.
But I do want to challenge you on the cultural informant piece because we are limited by our own personal experiences and we exist in our own frame of reference. And so to be able to gain perspective, certainly you wouldn't go to, if I'm seeking information about the lived experience of my African American male adolescent client, I can't go to like one African American man and say, you represent all African American men, tell me about you people. I mean, that's not sufficient. But I can say, look, through your lens and your lived experience, and knowing that the person that I would select as a culture informant would be somebody that is not just, I'm just a representative of this culture, but somebody who actually is a cultural informant. So who has experience and maybe research experience or practical experience or lived experience within the realm of the helping relationship that could be somebody who could help me understand a lens that is outside of my own capacity. I mean, I can empathize, but from a cultural standpoint, I think cultural informants are really critical. And it doesn't have to be approached as, you have all the answers, and so, I'm going to do or expect that you're going to give me everything I need. But it's one more variable, one more piece of the consultation puzzle that can allow you to see through a different lens.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a perspective I can't see from my position. That's all I'm looking for. More information. Yes, ma'am.
If you take this, if you remove the sexual aspect, which makes us all go like that, and you see all clients when they come in, they have really deep needs. And they may not see you sexually, but they can get just as attached in an emotional way and expect you to be their good friend and want to react that way. And it's no less of a problem.
Yes. So there's boundary issues regardless that have to be considered. So what are then some courses of action?
All right.
What are some, from the ridiculous to the logical, what could you do here?
Yes, sir.
We're just talking about the idea of talking to Brandon a little more, getting his perception of, where is this? It could be just something new in the relationship, and we don't know how long he's been out, and sort of what his thoughts are on relationships, and it could be a really therapeutic discussion to have that could deepen the trust that you're listening and considering where it's coming from.
Yep. So talk to him more is one action. What's another action? What else could you
Come
do?
on, okay, just go
You have
to
to
the
be
extreme.
transparent.
Yeah.
Transparent.
As the clinician in this, you have to bring that up in such a way that, okay, yes, I'm here to explore where's this coming from. But if I'm having some kind of feeling, I might have to say, look, maybe I'm uncomfortable, or I need to seek guidance, I need to do this, this, and this. I think being transparent will continue that professional relationship versus destroying it by saying, okay, we'll continue this next week and then go huddle with whoever. And then come back and be like, oh, look, I'm referring you somewhere else. So I think an air of transparency.
Okay, so expressing yourself through, being transparent. Okay, what's another action that could be taken?
I don't know that this is an action, but I know that all of our behavior models behavior. So that the way we respond, our actions provide a model for how they can respond. So to me, again, the transparency, the honesty, the communication would be where I start, just because that's where I think somebody who is in therapy, they wants to see that they can communicate, wants to see that it is okay to say your feelings. You may have to make a decision from there, but you're not going to get anywhere unless you start communicating, and that we can show them that their feeling is not the end of the world by how we respond.
Absolutely. What are some other actual actions that could be taken?
I was just going to say that it could be a test on the client's part, because maybe they've been used to, depending on their life experience, being used sexually.
Yes.
And when what is this therapist going to do when I say this? Is he going to take advantage of me, or is he going to be, is he safe and he's going to set a boundary and talk with me and hold the line, so to speak, and then I'll know if I'm really safe with him. So I don't know, I just, as you were talking, it made me think about that. Again, we
Another
have to get more
action?
information.
Yeah, one of the things that Trevor can do with Brandon is model the third step, which is turning it over. So if Trevor is saying in effect, look, I'm going to turn it over to the group. I'm going to turn it over to AA or NA. It's like turn it over to your higher power. You can take these feelings that you have, instead of just focusing on me, you can turn it over to your higher power and also use the group, because that's what we're here for, to support one another.
Okay.
That diffuses the transference.
Okay.
So all of these kind of fall into the.
Let's get another one.
Okay.
Go ahead.
In terms of just options in general, you could always terminate treatment, which is follow the exact letter of T for our agency mandates us to.
Yeah.
Just options on the
No,
Absolutely.
that's what we're looking for.
Yeah.
What are some actions you can take? Terminate treatment. I cannot handle this. I'm out. That's one
Absolutely.
option. May not be the best one, but it is an option.
It is, and that's important to consider. Anything else?
Did we talk about consultation as an action?
Well, we'll add it.
Consultation.
We really have sought consultation.
Okay,
At
this is prior to the actions.
Now we're at the point where we do it.
Ethically, we can't just terminate.
Right. So what would you do instead?
Well, but that's an option.
Yeah.
Now, what we're right now, we're just listing our actions.
Well, if Brandon then goes out and commits suicide, guess who they're going to look at? You know, if there's an ethical way of ending or terminating the treatment, then that has to be discussed with Brandon.
Okay.
If I say I'm uncomfortable with this, how about we talk about where to go from here? What other options are you willing to talk to another therapist?
So we're talking a referral.
Okay.
Yes, referral.
A referral, that's another option. Yes.
I'm not sure about this, but does it matter to iterate from Trevor's point of view that he's heterosexual and he's not attracted to the person?
Sure. In the expressing own feelings or being transparent, adding that component of, that self-disclosure, that is an option. I mean, what right now we're just really listing out what could people do in this situation. Yes.
I mean, I think we have to get clarification and more information from the client about what the personal feelings are. If the personal feelings is that the client thinks that we're cool or that we're helpful, and then I'm like, hey, listen, I just want to tell you I have a husband, right? And they're like, well, lady, I just thought you were cool.
Yeah.
Then that damages.
Yeah, talking to him more is definitely a big one, yes.
We're all focusing on what Trevor does, but we haven't focused on what Brandon So the question is, has anybody asked Brandon, what do you want to do? Has
Okay.
anybody said, Brandon, what does this mean to you? Does this mean you're comfortable continuing? You're not comfortable? Nobody asked him.
Yeah. And was there one more hand back here?
I was gonna say something, so I asked him what he wants to do.
Yeah, okay. Okay, ask him what he wants to do. Yes.
It might also be useful for Trevor to explore with Brandon how he may be setting himself up, because Brandon is, or rather Trevor's unavailable. So might there be a pattern, maybe there is, maybe there isn't, but is there a pattern in Brandon's life of setting himself up by seeking people unavailable and then setting himself up as rejected and abandoned?
Okay. All right, and yes.
If we're including the non-ethical ones, you could ignore it.
Yeah, ignore it.
But among the ethical ones, most of these responses most of them are under the category of response, and they're interesting, but you got to be careful that you're not responding to this different than you're responding to everything else he said. If you're a therapist who most of the time says, yeah, interesting, and he says this, and all of a sudden you're disclosing and asking him questions about what it means, you're making a mistake.
Yes, okay. All right.
So some things along the lines of, if we're going to continue working with Brandon, all these different avenues to pursue talking, if we're going to terminate, or just ignore, or if we're going to refer, are we going to refer to another heterosexual client? Are we going to turn to a gay practitioner? Are we going to refer to a female practitioner? There's every one of these decisions have all these offshoots, and every one of them may or may not have merit. And we need to look at them.
Yeah, and so when we move to the next slide, when we're enumerating those consequences, then, again, even those that felt so very comfortable to you in terms of seeming very appropriate, even those can have some downfall. And so we need to reckon, or even those that seem like, absolutely, I'd never do that, we need to recognize that there could be some benefit to them. So by looking at all the angles, then we recognize even variations. Like I think that what Tony just mentioned about a referral, a referral, if we recognize what the benefits could be in terms of a better match if needed, then there could be benefits to that. If it would be a relationship that would be more facilitative than the current one, then that would be something that could be considered as viable. On the flip side, straight up referral could do what? Yeah, it could damage him. It could hurt his trust issues, or his level of ability to connect with future helpers, or his ability to self-reveal. But we don't want to negate that if we referred, it could be better. It could be a better match, a more facilitative match. And a couple others. If we chose to ignore it, let's take that one. That's one that feels wrong. So what is obvious there? If we ignore it, what's the problem with that?
The client feel very rejected.
Client could feel rejected.
The therapist has a responsibility to be very self-aware, to be aware of the client's transference, and to be aware, for the therapist to be aware of their own countertransference. And that's a huge responsibility. So I think looking through that lens, it's fine if you want to process, but you're going to go down a slippery slope with the
Perhaps.
or you very well could. So I don't think that a referral, if you end up deciding that, would be that damaging if you're able to do it ethically, process it with the client, talk about the reasons, talk about why this is necessary, how you're protecting them. I don't see that as a problem.
Okay. Yes.
If you ignore it, it festers.
Okay, it could fester. It could fester. Yes.
I just think that if you ignore it, you're not validating for the client.
Okay.
They need some validation that their feelings are real. Whether however we can perceive them or not, they need to know that they're real.
Sure. Okay. Now let's take the flip side of that. What is a potential positive of ignoring? Yes.
in my life, I called my brother-in-law and said, I'm a drug addict, and he said, I'm a diabetic. And it validated me. We all have issues. So by ignoring it, by playing to it, you make the issue broader than it is.
Okay.
You make him uncomfortable with his own sexuality.
Okay.
You just run and say, okay, well, where do we go from here? But not play to the issue.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Anything else that you could see as a positive? Okay. Yeah. Maybe in that moment, you wouldn't be able to respond appropriately. And so, almost pushing the pause button, which would appear to be ignoring, is it would be appropriate. It would be better than what might come out of your mouth. Okay? Yes.
I'm not advocating for ignoring it.
Okay, but that's okay.
Possibly it could be one of those kind of empathic failures that if Brandon is healthy enough and can work through it on his own, it basically just leaves it in his lap to deal with it.
Okay. And then, playing devil's advocate, if we're considering somebody in really early recovery whose emotions are all over the map, it means nothing. We're just going to recognize where he is, just say, okay, this is probably because of this crazy roller coaster ride of emotions. He'll move forward. Let's just focus on our task at hand and move forward on his goals and see what happens. Maybe it does pan out and isn't anything. It truly is nothing. And by making a big deal and revealing myself, and this is my experience of your revelation, and I'm not sure, maybe we need to refer, or maybe not, maybe we just need to process for 3 hours and figure out where you are, and is like way too much based on what is really happening with Trevor. So in that case, ignoring might not be a terrible thing. So again, we say, when the gentleman said, well, you can ignore, our automatic was, oh, no, that's wrong. But when we really start to break it down, maybe it's not as wrong depending on the circumstances. And we don't really know until we process it more. Yeah, you first, sir, and then I'll go to you. Yes.
And you can address it as a goal, in the process. I mean, if you refer them, who do you refer them to? Somebody who's fat and ugly and passing the problem on.
That's an option.
Didn't have that on my list.
I know.
Well, and by not immediately addressing it, because you're working in some type of program, it means that he should have contact with other professionals.
Yeah.
So you can see if this kind of, if these personal feelings are just in relation to everybody who's helping him. So he's given similar feedback to a peer facilitator, or facilitator, or the nurse that takes his blood pressure every morning.
Yeah.
It can kind of get you a better idea of some of the things you need to work on with him, like maybe boundaries.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, and how about we do one more just for one that seems really appropriate. Let's talk to him more about it. I mean, it's difficult to find the downside of that, okay? But for this complex process, we need to acknowledge that there could be a downside, even to what seems to be logically the most appropriate response. So we are going to talk to him about it. We've talked ad nauseum about why that would be beneficial. What could be a problem with talking to him more about it?
Makes him feel exposed.
Yeah. Say those out loud, you guys.
I mean, you might misunderstand why I'm talking to him about it.
Okay.
If I'm not real clear what that's all about, where we're going.
He could have sort of made an impulsive decision to hear that and not be prepared to actually.
Maybe distract you from his underlying issue, treatment. Yeah.
The issue, I think, is not whether you talk about it with him or not, it's how you talk with him about it. If you talk about him in a way that feeds into the provocative behavior, you have a real problem.
Yes.
If you talk about it in such a way you put the responsibility back on the client and turn it over, as I suggested before, to the group, we interact with the group about it, then you have a therapy issue, you need to use the community.
Okay. And that, I think, again, becomes part of this process. It allows you to recognize what could be facilitative way to engage versus one that could cause harm. Yes.
If he is in fact throwing this out there as a way to distract from issues that he really needs to be working on as far as his addiction and so on, they're just following him down the primrose path.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So you see the process here. And then, so in the end, what?
What's our course
What
of
would
action?
you do with Brandon? Now that you've gone through all of this process.
I'd run away.
Run away.
Run away. Run.
Sit
Back to run
silently.
away. I know.
What would you do? Not as easy to come up with an answer now. Now that we've looked at all these variables, it's less obvious than it was probably when you initially read it. And we're like, oh, well, clearly I would do this. Well, now that we've looked at all the possibilities, it's like, what? So what do you think? What would you do? How about you, Justin?
Yeah, I think it does depend on where we started, how we approached it with it, but generally asking him in as positive and therapeutic way as possible, using the rapport we've developed over time with him, asking him to clarify, asking him where he was with it, what it all meant to him, giving him perspective. Right, and then, right, asking him sort of where he would choose to go.
Yeah.
Where did he go next?
Okay.
Because if you take a few minutes, even if you figure it's avoidance, then you can rule out if it is or if it isn't, and then that can inform the next step of your choices.
Yes.
What is this really when you get more information?
Yeah. Anything else anyone would add?
Just a simple reminder, you know why they're there, you know.
The purpose of
why they're there.
Yeah. It would allow for dialogue around that, perhaps.
Yes, ma'am.
I would also just, because I have to focus on my own issues too, just to make sure that I document every step that I take, every consultation that I have. Keeping it within my, loose files and notes just to make sure that if anything were to happen, then I would have that proof of these course of action that I did take. Because I also, in making sure that I maintain my licensure to protect my other clients that I work with.
Yes. And really, in this case, if this continued and was ongoing and did become an interference with his ability to make progress, then a referral might really ultimately need to be made. And so the nice thing about this is you've got a whole laundry list now of possible actions that you can kind of keep referring back to and tailoring and to fit this client as you continue your work with them. And so, being able to acknowledge that, okay, I'm going to do this now, but I recognize the decision that I've made has potential for problems. It might not be perfect. We're aware of the potential problems, and I might need to do more tomorrow or the next day. And I ultimately may need to terminate my work with them and assure that there's a transfer of services.
One of the things that we haven't talked about is documentation.
Yes, which is, what she was mentioning.
If none shows up in documentation, we leave ourselves liable. If I've documented, I've consulted, if I've documented, I've talked to the client about referral, then I'm more likely to be safe.
Which is something else that is so pertinent and relevant for the legal pieces too. Because if you are called to stand on an issue and you have chosen even to break the law or just not, I mean, if you're still within the law, but your practice is being questioned, then if you've documented everything and you've gone through this rigorous process, you have a far more developed response to your decision making as opposed to, well, it was just the right thing to do. And my code said to do it. Yeah, that falls short in a court of law.
Bianca.
Just out of curiosity, if Trevor is Tony, what was the course of action?
If what?
If Trevor was Tony, what would the course of action be?
Oh, yeah.
You gotta protect the innocent here. No, continue working with them. Seek further information. Felt there would be more harm than good to refer out. So, yeah.
Setting clear boundaries.
Setting clear, very clear boundary set. Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Here's our next activity, guys. Are you ready? You're kind of already naturally broken into groups. There's some natural groups going on here. Amongst yourselves, I want you guys to talk amongst yourselves and look through those ethical dilemmas I gave you earlier in the program, and settle on one that you'd like to build a case around. Now, the devil's going to be in the details here. I want you to build a case and make it come to life. Give us some good issues to peel back away. Work together. We're going to give you about 15 minutes, and then we're going to process it together. All right? We're going to work through Corey's decision-making model. I want to see what you guys came up with.
About 10 minutes.
All right, 10 minutes. You have 10 minutes.
Yeah, so pick one for your table and then build a case and go through the 8 steps from a cognitively complex perspective. And remember that first step should be concise. What is the problem? One sentence. Make sure you're enumerating both the positives and negatives of each choice.
All right, guys, let's bring it back in. Let's bring it in. All right, listen up, guys. We're getting close to our time limit here, so I want to work through this with you guys. We spent a lot of time processing the 8 steps in the previous case, so I really want to work with you now on processing the process you just went through right now. What stood out with you as one of the biggest challenges in working through these 8 steps? Yes?
Well, we just had a really lively discussion, really great. And what I took from it is that we couldn't come to a consensus. And the question was, physical contact with the client, what is it ethical, what is it unethical? And the fact that we couldn't come to a consensus, I felt really stimulating the real world. Because sometimes it's just, it's not automatic. What you do is that what I took from it, there may be a lot of right ways of dealing with this, because I'm a card-carrying relativist.
Sound like you had a real ethical dilemma at your table. I mean, yes, wow. Anybody else experience the same thing or something similar, where you guys couldn't come to a middle spot at the table?
It's kind of like that here, because I guess we work in different capacities. So what's one thing, like they work in a hospital setting, so the other thing with ours was whether you accept the gifts or not. And like you said, each agency has its own policy on what's acceptable and what's not. Because they're in a hospital setting, something that would be acceptable for them wouldn't be acceptable in the agency that I'm in. So we would have.
There we go. Varying regulation, facility to facility. Yes, okay.
Something that I can take away from this too is that I can't make this decision on my own.
Yeah, it does open your mind how narrow our perspective can be. Yes.
Yeah, there's too many variables, and if I try to do it on my own, I've got my own issues, and I need to consult. I need to talk to other people. Don't do it in isolation.
Exactly. What else? Yes, ma'am.
You gave us 2 options. First, you couldn't afford treatment, pro bono, or terminate. And we found both of those unacceptable. So we worked to find a middle solution.
Middle solution.
Where
Good.
we concur. Some services or whatever. So because neither of those is acceptable.
And that's often what it comes to.
Right, and we talked about the different resources that we weren't all aware of, and also it also brought up the conversation of being able to advocate for needs of clients and disparities. So, I mean, it was really good discussion.
Over here.
We can agree with that. And we pretty much, yeah, exactly. But it also, for me at least, it made me realize at one point you know, I would break the rules without any question, because I'm not gonna leave someone abandoned. And, whatever that meant.
And knowing you have a real deliberate process that you've engaged in to back and support your decision can give you a bit of leverage to defend yourself if that became the case.
But it also showed me how many steps there were before I'd need to.
Yes.
To go through the process.
Anything else? Other takeaways? How do you see applying this in your professions? Where do you see its place?
Well, the pro bono thing, but the process or the example?
The process.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I work in a private practice, and there's some of us clinicians in the same building in the area that meet at least once a month to run difficult cases and to conceptualize. And I find that to be really helpful.
Right.
What was it?
We did that. Using existing groups to process. And in terms of being able to apply what you gained today, how do you see doing anything differently? Are you leaving here with any tools, basically? How would you describe
Well, I think
it?
the two cases you talked about where our immediate, we tend to assume immediately when someone says feelings, it's sexual. And when someone says not, that maybe I want to not keep living, we assume it is suicide.
Yes.
And in the environment I work in, we are hypersensitive to suicide and homicidal thoughts and behaviors. And so that's just a reminder. I don't work with terminal folks, but I work with people who that's a constant daily thing we're checking.
Yes.
So it's just a really big foot stomp to not assume, make sure you slow down and gather more information.
Yes. And yes, go ahead.
Yeah, my takeaway is about patient safety and appreciating client frames of reference.
Yes.
Because you may think that it was something innocuous and comforting, but they may wind up doing attacked, or they oftentimes won't tell you, they can show you non-verbally. So I think it's useful in some areas of physical touch to really lean on the conservative. And real is, and I believe there's no substitute for leaning on the client.
One of the things I think is most important that I would ask you to take away is that sense of having a lot of experience, feeling like I know these situations. I know what the policies are in my agency. I've been doing it this way over and over and over again. To be able to look at that and say, but what else what are some other ways I could view this? Just because I've always handled this ethical dilemma in this way, is it truly the best way? Is my automatic truly the most ethical decision for every client? And to be able to say, let me pause and consider other perspectives and really look at my way. What's the downside to it? Because there really is a downside to everything. And so what is the downside? Even though this has worked for me well in the past, let me take that pause to recognize the downside and be prepared to address in some modified ways to enhance the complexity of your ethical decision making moving forward. Yes.
There's a book that I can't remember if it's Malcolm Gladwell or the guy who wrote Made to Stick. They talk about the curse of knowing. We know so much we forget to use fresh eyes, and we get into automatic pilot.
Yes,
exactly. Remain teachable, continue to grow in our field. Take ego, set it aside, and be open to new ideas, new perspectives. Gosh, it seems like the further you get in your field, the more you sit down and go, I got this. That becomes the danger zone. All right, guys. I'm going to take.
Actually, what was the last one?
Right there.
Yeah. So Yeah, I mean, the consulting piece thing, just on our final thoughts. Ethics training, fortunately for our CEUs, we have to do this. And so, ethics is one of those areas that we typically remain pretty up to date on. But recognize that your growing edges. The cultural diversity pieces, being a culturally humble practitioner is so essential. So I always want to plug that area in terms of your ongoing professional development as well in order to be ethical. And recognize the complexity and seek that consultation. And we kind of wanted to end on that type of educational plug. In addition to
that, guys, when I was working on this presentation, gosh, at the root of it, why are we doing it? Ultimately, why are we here? We're trying to help. We're trying not to hurt. We're trying to protect. It reminded me, and I came across this video that I saw. I'm already getting emotional just thinking about it. When I was working at my associates years ago, I was still kind of like unsure of my career path. And this video was shown in one of my classes, and it solidified this area is where my calling is. So, I mean, it brings a lot of emotion up for me when I'm going to show it to you, but it reminded me why we're here, why we're doing this, why we're sitting through an ethics presentation on a beautiful day. This is why.
Mm-hmm.
Happiness hit her like a train on a track. Coming towards her, stuck still, no turning back. She hid around corners and she hid under beds. She killed it with kisses, and for all that she fled. With every bubble she sank with a drink, and the water
No. Wow, that one. I know, and I've watched it hundreds of times. Well, thank you guys for our time. It's Tammy and Tony Dice.